Hello and welcome to a new episode on Sadhana World Foundation. As you know, we care about crafting young lives. We present stories based on moral values drawn from the lessons in history and our folk tales. We think that these stories contain tremendous amount of moral teachings which our young children and young adults can inculcate into their lives and become stronger and better human beings. Today's episode is focused on something that we face in our lives day to day. Haven't we seen, haven't we experienced situations where we trust a person's words and take certain action? We buy assets, expensive assets like houses, like consumer durables, and various other products based on somebody's advice. We trust someone's words. We entrust our career to an employer or to an organization based on some recommendations from somebody. We enter into relationships with some kind of trust on the other person. But what happens when we see, after having entered into the deal, the promises made earlier or the perception, the experiences, the expectations that we had were very different from what it is in reality? What happens that time? We feel wronged, we feel as if justice has been taken away from us. We naturally feel angry about it. We want to take revenge, isn't it? Isn't that the natural response? Let's say there is war happening between Russia and Ukraine. Think of the common citizens of Ukraine. What wrong did they do to take birth in Ukraine, to be suffering what they are suffering at this point in time? Let's say the terrorist attacks which have happened in different parts of the world at different points in time. Think of the common citizens, what wrong they did to become citizens of that place. Surely they voted certain government to power, or they participated actively or passively in getting their rulers. But imagine what kind of control they have in determining who becomes the ruler and what kind of a policy that the country undertakes. The control is very, very minimal. But what happens when such a situation happens? What is the natural response? The natural response is that of anger, frustration, disappointment. I want to take revenge. If we dip into some of the mythological stories, Ramayana, for example, is full of lessons where the characters in the mythology of Ramayana have undergone several situations which were not under their control. They just landed in that situation of disappointment, frustration, anger, where the trust or the expectations were not met. Think of a situation where Lord Ram, by his birth, was expected to lead the life of a king at the appropriate time, and the time had come. The entire kingdom, everybody in the country was so happy that Ram will become the king. The royal family, the people in the palace were all happy about it. But that evening something happened, and one of the mothers had a different idea. Kaikeyi. She had two special boons and she decided to exercise those boons. And she wanted Ram to be sent into the forest in exile for 14 long years, and her son would become the king of Ayodhya. What would be the response of Ram? What would be the response of the people who are not in control of this situation? Of course, there is sadness, that's the natural response of the citizens who had very little control about the decisions or the events which are taking place in the royal family. But what about the characters who are deeply involved in it? Kaikeyi, of course, got what she wanted. She wanted her son to become the king, and Ram to be sent to exile so that her son has no obstacles on his way of becoming the king of such a kingdom, Ayodhya. Dashrath, the father, was of course extremely unhappy, sad, because it is absolutely not imaginable by Dashrath that Kaikeyi, who is such a loving mother for Ram, will take such a decision. And he was bound by the dutifulness of a king, and hence he had to grant the boons of Kaikeyi, and his response was that of sadness, helplessness, and he died after a few days. Think of the response of Lord Ram, how he responded to this situation. He went to his father Dashrath and said that that's what Mother Kaikeyi wants, and you as a king have promised, you as a husband has promised to your wife at some point in time, and this decision is about you being the king and choosing your heir to the throne. So you have to fulfill upon the responsibility of a king. A king's first responsibility is to honor one's words. So you have to lead by example. You have to walk the talk and do what you are supposed to do. You have to grant the promise of Mother Kaikeyi, I am willing to go to the forest. Maybe there is something better in store for me, and I will do what is required. You go ahead, fulfill your promise. He forgives from inside his heart. The trust that he had of one's mother, that mother would never think ill about her son. That trust is broken, isn't it? Something unimaginable has taken place. So here, instead of he thinking that he has been wronged, instead of he thinking that I have to bring justice, this is extremely unjustified situation. He is thinking to forgive Mother Kaikeyi for the thinking that she has. Maybe the thinking is narrow, thinking is that of selfishness, but he is willing to forgive. What happens in this particular situation? Something very, very intense that we observe in our common life, day to day life. If we are holding a small pebble in our hand for 2 minutes, it doesn't hurt. Hold it for 10 minutes and see. Hold it for 1 hour and see. Hold it for 2 hours and see. That's the kind of training that in the military special forces people go through. They carry small weight for long period of time. So hate is something like that pebble in our hand. If I am holding on to the hate, holding on to the feeling that I have been wronged, holding on to the feeling that injustice has been meted out to me, then I am only suffering the pain of holding on to that hate for long period of time. Since we are living in this world, there will be situations where unprecedented things will take place. Unexpected situations will develop. However, can we forgive and forget and move on? Wherever it is possible, as much as it is possible. I think beautiful learning. Ramayana is full of many such stories. Our mythological stories are full of several such teachings, that when somebody breaks a vow, breaks a promise, whether it's in a relationship or it's in a financial transaction or it is in an advice, when it turns bad, you don't start being revengeful, because it doesn't help you. Rather, we need to forgive that person, we need to forget and move on, trying to recover the situation, recover the ground that we have lost. We need to move on. Ladies and gentlemen, intense teaching of situations that we face day to day in our lives. We know the solution. Implementation is not easy, but if we can inculcate that into our lives, we will become better and stronger human beings. Thank you very much for spreading this wisdom, timeless wisdom that's there in our scriptures. Thank you very much.